So I've had a lot of people ask me, what do I think of this New Holland 313? We used to have a John Deere for the 835 Moco, an early one. And then last year we traded that for this. Main reason is honestly we couldn't get a good used Deere like anywhere. And there's a few things we liked about this. So we said, you know what? Let's try a New Holland. Fuck it. So this is what it is. I believe it's a 2014 model. New Holland 313. Which is 13 foot. Our other mower was 11 and a half. I believe that's what 835s are. I guess I'll start with what I don't like about it, which the list is not that small. I don't like these. So obviously the weight is on the cylinder stop now, but you flip this spring around and then it kind of flops out of the way. The John Deere would have a, can't remember if it was on that side or this side. It'd literally just be a valve and you just turn it 90 and then that would prevent the cylinders from dropping. As long as from the valve to the cylinder you didn't blow that hose, you'd be okay. But this one, you got a cylinder stop on both sides, and occasionally you're mowing along, you got your stops down, a piece of grass or hay or anything, a stick, come up, because obviously this is like this, and somehow it'll flip this spring, and then your stop comes up, and the next time you lower, you're gonna, it'll lower sideways because the one stop flipped up somehow. It doesn't happen much, but it does happen. It's kind of annoying. I do like the valve better. I honestly might just put one on here, but I would have to do it on this side, I think. Or I just put it right up on the tractor. That way you just not mess with those, because the SCV does leak down a little bit, so when you go down the road we like to flip them up. But what else do I not like about this thing? This is kind of minor. When you're mowing, let's say you got like 4 feet left. You got 4 feet left and you got your hay cut here laying in a windrow. It'll actually like to catch on the edges. The John Deere, I never noticed it do that. It'll kind of catch up on the edges and build up. So whenever you do lift up, there'll be just a freaking massive pile. So you got to watch that. Which if you catch it, it's not so bad. But if you ain't looking, then you got a problem. As far as I can think, that's the only things I don't like about it. It does have, like, I swear, double the grease zerks that John Deere had. Yeah, I would think close to double, which you can take two ways. Your maintenance takes a hell of a lot longer, but you also got less sealed bearings and more greasable ones if you actually grease it. So I don't know. I guess it just takes a lot longer, at least for us, to grease it over the 835, because you got all these universal joints. There's just more everywhere. There's more grease zerks, but whatever. And then also your gearboxes. The Deere, you just had a one check plug. This one, you got a dipstick on every gearbox. I think there's 8, which kind of sucks to look at it, but if you have a bearing go out, you're just gonna screw up the one gearbox, not shit the entire bed all the way across, which happened on our John Deere. And then you gotta throw a whole new cutter bar in. So I think these gearboxes like $500 or something, and you can get a new, just the one row gearbox, the one turtle. It's just dark. But another thing I like about this, the John Deere, you could flip this end up and that end up, but not the center. Well, this one you can flip. Can't do it one-handed too well, but you can flip all the sections up. And they flip up out of the way better, I think. But of course, it's one-handed. And then down here, even this piece, you can flip this up like a hinge and get right in there to grease that one. But literally the whole thing flips up out of the way. Another thing I don't like actually is when we don't have the quick change knives, but the John Deere would have a hole right here so you can kind of get your finger up through and hold the bolt and the knife. Well, this one doesn't have it, so you could literally have to dig some of this buildup and try to get your fingers under there to hold the bolt. Kind of nitpicking, but it's a lot easier on the Deere with the bolt-on knives. So another thing we really liked is they got all the hydraulic hoses on top of the tongue, not through the tongue. On the John Deere, we blew plenty of hoses on that, and you got to take all the shields off across the top, and you got to pull the whole hose through, because 2 feet from the coupler you wore a hole in it, and you got to pull the whole thing. This one, if we blow a hose, it's just right here to there. So you got 3 foot of hose, all you got to do is replace. And then on the other end of the tongue, you got 3 feet of hose to your cylinders. I think that's a lot better, personally. But I did see on the brand new Hollands, I seen some video and they had a New Holland sales rep. And I guess the red and yellow ones, they actually put the hoses back in the tongue, and the guy called it a feature. I don't know what type of feature that is. Maybe I'm not thinking right, but how is that a feature? I mean, they're on top of the tongue, they're clamped down nice. I don't know how you're ever gonna hit these or damage them where they're at. Easy access. And if somehow you get a pinhole in it, you can braze it, or you just get a new line. It's right up in the open. Take all these clamps off. Whatever. But that is not a feature, putting it in the tongue, New Holland guy. This is a feature in my book. Right on top. But that's just me. On the back, you have more gearboxes. I don't know how many more gearboxes in the John Deere, but there's a lot more gearboxes on this. The John Deere would have a big belt back here, so it'd come into here, drive the belt, and then you have a shaft straight to your header gearbox. I don't know. I guess as long as you check your oil in your gearboxes, they shouldn't go out, but whatever. I checked them, so they were good. Yeah, there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gearboxes. So another thing we like is the drawbar swivel. I know John Deere has them now, the drawbar swivels, but this is a 2014 model, and I don't think John Deere had drawbar swivels until like 2 years ago. We've never had a 2-point version. The John Deere was the equal angle hitch, which is a joke because your shaft is always turning sharp. This one, it's always straight, but I heard that the 2-point models are harder to hook up, so we went with the drawbar hitch. I like it quite a bit, actually. You don't get that knocking PTO noise all the time when you're making sharp corners. And you actually, I rarely ever hit the tire here. The John Deere would occasionally on accident, but this one I don't think maybe I've hit it once, but yeah. One thing I don't like about it is it does take longer to hook up, even the John Deere with the equal angle. The John Deere, instead of these 4 bolts that tightened on the drawbar, it was just shimmed. So if you did switch tractors and you had a tractor with a thicker drawbar, you would have to adjust the shims, which takes more time. But if you're like most people, you usually cut with the same tractor. So once you set the shims, you're good. This one, you got to loosen these 4 bolts, then you got to loosen at least one of the sides, if not both. And then when you tighten it, you got to tighten them all up too. So you're tightening 6 instead of 2. So that takes longer to put on. I know I'm just complaining here, but people literally asked. This thing, if you're not parked on flat ground, if it leans one way or another, your gearbox kind of wants to go like this every time you hook up. So you got to be mindful of that, I guess. But especially if you can't back the tractor in square wherever you parked it, and then this thing kind of goes downhill, then you got to have someone hold it or prop a stick up against it or something. I ran into that once, but that's that part. Kind of like this toolbox built in. I don't know if I've never seen a John Deere one with a toolbox, I guess, but at this point I'm nitpicking. You do got to drop this stand down, then you put the jack on. Then when you unhook, you got to pull this pin, flip this around so you can hold your PTO up. It just takes more time to hook up. But we've only hooked it up, I don't know, 4 times. So we'll get a little faster, but still, it's a little longer. I do think it slides on the side hill just a little less, but I could be wrong. It does have a belt under here too, though, which we should actually get a new one because I've seen some cracks in it. But we are done with first crop cutting. I just got done with it today. Before I forget that. Another thing I like about this over the John Deere is the John Deere had, these are kind of tucked up underneath your crop deflectors, maybe you want to call it. And then they had like a wing nut looking thing, and you tightened it and loosened it by hand or whatever. And if you're trying to make a really narrow windrow in a thick crop, it don't matter. You literally would have to get a wrench on there and kind of tighten it up just to get it to stay, and it still would slide open. It's kind of a pain in the ass to get it just right. But this one, you literally just pull this, pop this up, pick a hole. Like, it's not gonna move. Once you have it as narrow as it goes, unless you somehow break this or it falls out, it's not going anywhere. The John Deere would slide open. I like that a hell of a lot better. This will make a hell of a wide windrow, but it is a wider mower, so it is what it is there. We don't make the widest windrow because we don't have a kicker wheel on our rake. If we had one, I would set this thing as wide as it can go, and then when you rake, the kicker wheel would kind of kick the hay to the side, and then the back wheels would kick it in. That way everything gets raked. Otherwise, you're going to have little spots here and there that doesn't get raked or flipped, and we needed to flip it 5-6 hours before we bale to get that last little bit of drying in. But trying to think what else. Your lockout for your swing valve is the same. There's just a handle, just like the John Deere. These ones almost have like a wheel weight in the wheels to kind of help prevent sliding. I don't know how much they actually help, but yeah, they're there. I don't know how much weight is actually there. Maybe there's not as much as you think. But that's about it, I think. I do like this a lot. Holds your hoses up out of the way. Otherwise, on the John Deere, we always have to tie them to the 3-point arms. This kind of picks them up out of the way, and it swivels as you turn. But I don't know what the 2-point John Deeres have, if they have that or not. But yeah, overall, pretty solid machine, honestly. I don't think we regret it, but it is nice to have the additional 1.5 foot of cut. That's for sure.